What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Today, I announce my resignation as your Prime Minister. I know, heartbreaking news, especially for those of you who enjoyed skyrocketing grocery prices, crippling inflation, and housing so unaffordable it turned millennials into lifelong roommates.
All right, that's part of a deep fake. I should have maybe done a warning in advance of that in case someone just fell off their chair. That is a deep fake put together at the, we saw this at the end of last week. Pretty convincing, too. It's not only the audio, it actually looks like Justin Trudeau is saying those words in a speech. James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette's on the line. So, Jim, this caused a bit of an uproar last week, right?
Absolutely, and if nothing else, it should be an indicator as to how dangerous the future is for a lot of us, and not just in terms of covering politics, but in everything, where fake news can actually look like real news. Although the fact of the matter is, to a certain extent, you could also argue that for the foreseeable future, we also have a fake government. We don't really know who's in charge. We don't know how long the Prime Minister is going to be hanging around. Every day seems to bring a new sector of the Liberal Party that wants him gone. Yes, it's over the holidays, but we're also realizing the clock is ticking south of the border, where everyone's favorite dysfunctional narcissist, Donald Trump, is going to be sworn in next month, and we still have no idea how to respond to that. And with every passing day, however, it seems the Liberal Party is more and more divided, more and more confused. And I don't think that's a place Canada can afford to be right now. But I guess so long as Justin Trudeau's ego has to be fed, will all of us be walking on eggshells, as we say in these parts, until he finally decides to actually put out a real announcement, Aaron, that he's leaving. And you know what? I saw a report today. Sources are saying he's not going to do anything over the holidays. With all due respect to sources, I think he's going to do something. But when he does it, he'll have thought about it 40 seconds before he announces.
Okay, I thought what I heard this morning was he's going on vacation. He's taking his family with him. There'll be no announcement. You're not buying any of that?
I don't buy anything. I don't buy anything anymore. And, ever since the whole thing with Freeland, right? The guy's on his own planet. Like, no one has denied that's what happened. No one has turned around and said, how dare Christian Freeland write this tissue of lies. No, what he did was call one of his most loyal senior cabinet ministers, fire her on a Zoom call, say, I'm going to be given the job to someone who's very, very close to you. But in the meantime, feel free to deliver the economic update. And like I said then, I'll say it now, completely different planet. And I have heard anecdotally, I have nothing, hard and soft, but I have heard anecdotally that as an individual, Justin Trudeau is notoriously indecisive. So who knows? Maybe he has made up his mind a zillion times, and I'll make up his mind a zillion more. But the clock is ticking. And I think if his ego is giving him his biggest piece of advice, he has to remember, his ego has to tell him, the longer he waits, the more damage he's done, the more his name will become synonymous with things that went horribly, horribly wrong in this country. They won't be naming schools or libraries after him. They may be naming disastrous situations after him.
So I want to ask you what I did here. I was going to ask David Hertel later on as well. This idea today, when we found out his entire Ontario caucus en masse comes out and suggests that he resigned for the better of the party, if you will, for the best of the party.
Yeah.
The old story has always been you can't win a federal election without winning Quebec. We know that's not necessarily true. Can you win a federal election without Ontario?
Absolutely not. You can't win a federal election without Ontario, and you can't guarantee a majority. It's possible, but you can't guarantee a majority without Quebec. So Ontario is the first piece of the puzzle. Ontario has essentially turned its back on him. And I read it was about a little more than 50 of the 75 Ontario caucus members, which basically means there's probably 75 of the 75 members there, and just they just don't want to stand up and be counted. But this is it. We keep hearing how all of these decisions are going to have to be made. We keep hearing about the excesses of Donald Trump. We need someone in charge. We need someone at the control panel. And basically, the ship of state, if Justin Trudeau is steering the ship of state, he's unconscious at the wheel, and we're just sort of like, chugging around in circles. It is absolutely unacceptable. And the fact that more rage is not being, elicited from the ranks of his own party, I find is rather disquieting. People are being very polite. I think we're past the point of being polite. This guy is actually playing with the country. He's jerking Canada around, and I think it's time it stopped.
We heard, was it yesterday or Jim, or a couple of days ago, maybe over the weekend, whatever group got together, U.S.-Canada policy, with Trump and borders and everything like that. He's carrying on like nothing, like everything is okay.
Absolutely. He's chairing a meeting of that today, by the way. I don't know if this is exactly the utterly meaningless, empty vessel he offered Chrystia Freeland as a consolation prize after he fired her from the finance portfolio. But, this is it. You're going to chair a meeting. We don't even know if they're going to be around next week.
Yeah.
So really, it is so dishonest, Aaron. It is so infuriating. I can't think of anybody who has treated this country. And, we can complain about the other leaders. And, yes, they have their own less than endearing qualities. But I think I've never seen a Canadian politician exhibit more contempt for his office and for this country than Justin Trudeau.
From federal politics to provincial politics, I don't know if we can say, contempt for his, voters, but François Legault has not been in the news of late. Is the suggestion to them the longer he can stay out of it, the better it is for him?
Absolutely. The polls show it over and over again. The longer he keeps his mouth shut, the more he keeps his face out of the public eye. He and his supermajority tend to chug along. Well, they don't do any worse. But the fact is, and I was listening to your interview earlier with Liberal MNA Desiree McGrath, this is a government that doesn't know what it's doing. This is a government that deserves to be pilloried from every platform in this province. I can only hope that Ms. McGraw's comments are being repeated in the regions, in what I like to refer to as CAC-land, because this really egregious level of incompetence and insouciance about what happens in Quebec, what is being done in terms of the big problems in Quebec. We want to teach people French, but we're not really teaching them French because we're cutting funding for French classes. It is the most Alice in Wonderland. We don't know what we're doing from one minute to the other government that that has hit Quebec, I think, ever. Certainly in my knowledge. But the other problem is, everyone, I think, is going to have to reinvent themselves, and certainly the Liberals. I know, I'm no fan of their timetable for their leadership review, but my God, they better be right, because the only alternative, and I hate to say it, I think a lot of our listeners would grudgingly agree, the only alternative to François Legault on the CAQ is pas Pierre Plamondon and the Parti Québécois. They actually have that credibility. Unfortunately, they also have a pledge to hold a referendum on sovereignty in their first term. So, just what we need after 50 years, more uncertainty, more pie in the sky, absolutely fabricated visions of a successful independent Quebec. But here we are. And yet nobody seems able to break this deadlock. We were stuck, and we said this back in 2018 when he was first elected. He finally broke this vicious cycle, separatism versus federalism. Finally, Quebec can move forward. No. Because now it's not separatism versus federalism. It's the CAQ versus everyone else. It's the CAQ versus immigrants. It's the CAQ versus Anglophones. It's the CAQ versus people who don't agree with the CAQ or people who dare to question their policies. Not healthy was never healthy. And it'll be interesting to see, come the next general election, which still seems to be decades away.
Yeah, it's true.
How Quebecers are going to vote. And as I've said in the past, and I don't think it can be repeated often enough, we can only hope that the damage the CAQ has done, and I'm sure will do, before they I like to think, get drop-kicked out of office in 2026, will be repairable by whatever government shows up. I'm not 100% sure, though, and quite frankly, I think the damage done to whatever credibility governments enjoyed in Quebec on the part of the public has also been severely eroded.
Just to follow up really quickly, this idea of stay out of the limelight, polls show, you're better off when you do that. Does the same apply to PSPP with the PQ? Because, they saw their popularity slip a bit. I mean, they're still way ahead of the CAQ, right? But the idea of not talking about separation or a referendum works in their favor, does it not?
Of course it does. But on the other hand, when we saw some slippage on the part of the PQ, and indeed just in overall, how can I put it, admiration for the PQ, you'll recall that upon occasion, Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon sort of may have overreacted to certain things. He seemed a bit, his responses to a particular issue seemed a little too emotional. People are wondering, well, is this guy too thin-skinned for this line of work? That, I think, is a potential weak spot for the Parti Québécois. But on the other hand, the gift, the political gift that they have every day when they wake up, and I'm sure they're very thankful for, is François Legault and the CAQ.
Right.
Because every week, every month, every day, Aaron, they find some new way to screw up. And not just for Anglophones or immigrants, for everybody. So in that regard, they are something of a reverse national treasure. We'll see how clever they are in 2025. But remember, we're stuck with them for that entire year. And for the next 10 months of 2026, God help us all. So who knows what will happen? Will people get fed up? I think that's a big question for 2025, Eric. Will the CAQ caucus hold together in time for the next election? Or are there people who are going to turn around and say, you know what? It ain't looking too good. Maybe I should find another line of work, or maybe I should change parties. Who knows? But I have a sneaking suspicion, perhaps, this vaunted third way, this political phenomenon that was the CAQ created by François Legault may not survive the coming year.
We shall see. As you said, 2026 seems so far away even now. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.